Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 AM KKNW. I'm Brian.
And I'm Dan.
Our next guest, Lisa Downs, is the owner of New Aspect Coaching, specializing in career and retirement transition coaching. She focuses on supporting those looking to transition into leadership roles, figuring out what's next in their careers, and considering what potential retirement could look like. Lisa's worked as a learning professional for EMC Squared, now Dell Technologies, the Boeing Company, Pemco Insurance, T-Mobile, and spent 6 years in the accounting industry prior to going independent in her work in 2015. Lisa is an associate certified coach through the International Coach Federation, a certified professional in learning and performance, and a certified physician development coach. She also certified a number of assessment tools that she uses with her clients in the areas of identifying strengths, personality type, and work style. Originally from the Midwest, Lisa and her husband Chris have lived in the Seattle area for 19 years with their two wonder cats, Gracie and Fletcher. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thanks so much.
So tell us, what do you do when you're not coaching or taking care of those wonder cats?
Yeah, the wonder cats. They are great cats. They're from Yakima, so we always say the best cats come from Yakima.
Oh, that's funny.
So enjoy cooking, reading, travel. My husband and I like to be local tourists in the area. So even though we've lived here almost 20 years already, we still like to get out and about and take day trips and weekend trips. And
it's kind of a fun perspective to have on the city is when you pretend like you're a tourist, because there's a lot to see.
There
right?
is. There's a ton to see, and things are always changing, so it's always fun.
So Midwest, well, we like to ask our guests when they come on to share with us a fond memory of the house they grew up in.
Sure. So I grew up in Chesterton, Indiana. So it's a small town about an hour's drive east of Chicago on the tip of Lake Michigan. And my home was on a 2-acre property, and we had a couple acres of woods behind us with a creek running through it and a huge expansive front yard. So it was a great environment for a kid to grow up in and to run around and have friends over. And you felt private, even though it was a pretty quick drive into town, and Chicago was pretty close, so we could take the train in or drive into downtown Chicago and play that way, or head to the Dunes Lakeshore Park and play on the beach too. So it was a great location.
Oh, fun. Right. So how did you get started in professional coaching?
So I got started with, after working, my first career was actually radio. And after working in radio for a few years, I decided to become a teacher. And so got started in education, teaching high school of all things.
Wow.
So high school language arts and English and speech and debate and all that fun stuff, and taught journalism. And then decided to switch into adult learning. And so really got started in the world of adult learning, corporate training, workplace learning and coaching back in 2003, and worked as an employee in different organizations doing learning and development and leadership development. And then through that work, developed my interest in coaching people one-on-one, and it really grew from there.
Wow. So the coaching process that you're working with, what does that look like?
So basically, when I work with clients in coaching, it's really a process of self-discovery. And so basically what that means is that I ask a lot of good open-ended questions and to draw out the answers from my clients. And so it's really this belief fundamentally that the client has the answer. I'm just here to tease it out and to help them realize and understand what that answer is and what that solution is. So it's definitely not me prescribing what to do. That's an advisor or a mentor. So it's not me telling. It's more me asking the good questions and leading the client through this self-discovery process.
So who would you say are some of your mentors in that coaching style?
Oh, so mentors. So I have a number of mentors just through being a member of the ICF, which is the International Coach Federation, as well as ATD, which is the Association for Talent Development. And one of my key mentors is a great coach. Her name is Amara, and she's my mentor coach. And I worked with her a lot last year, too, when I had to renew my coaching credential because we have to get 10 hours of mentor coaching every 3 years. And she's been a great mentor to me, just helping me understand and really refine that process.
What are common issues that come up in retirement coaching?
Well, common issues, a big one is, who am I going to be if I'm not doing the work that I've done? So when you think about someone who has been a partner in a law firm, for example, for a long time, or has worked at Boeing for 30 years, or whatever it is, so much of our identity can be wrapped up in our work that's a big part of it is, who are you now going to be if you're not doing X at such and such organization, or you're not a CPA at this firm anymore, or you're not a teacher at this school anymore, and what does that look like? And also issues just around time. What the heck am I going to do with myself? Now we know with our longevity, retirement can last upwards of 20 to 30 years, and that's a huge chunk of time to not really have any type of plan for how you're going to spend it. And as I always say, you hear a lot of folks say, well, I'll just spend time with the grandkids. And I always say, well, okay, do the grandkids know that? Do their parents know that? That's not really a plan. And they're going to grow up and have their own lives too. So those are some of the issues, as well as communication. And especially when you have a couple or, a spouse that has worked out of the home, and maybe one works at home, or both people have worked.
Yeah.
And now they're sitting around looking at each other 24/7 going, who the heck are you?
Yeah.
What now? And what are we going to do? So working with that as well in terms of just communication dynamics, because it can be a big change.
And I think about women who sometimes their identity is wrapped up in their kids and their family. That's a tough transition.
Right, it is.
And, so that would be, I think, a challenging one as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's a lot wrapped up in it in terms of roles or kind of the hats that we wear. Mm-hmm. And the role identification is a big piece. And sure, you've got folks who, may have spent that time focused on raising the kids, taking care of the home, making sure all of those essentials are taken care of. And now it's like, okay, well, I've got this time on my hands. We're empty nesters. Mm-hmm. What does that look like now, in addition to that communication dynamic piece with their partner or spouse?
So the interesting thing is, with all your background, right, in the transitions and stuff like that, how did you set on retirement coaching?
So I set on this a couple of different reasons. One was I was coaching a friend of mine who lives out in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was working with her last year. She's a business owner of about 20 years, and she was having a bit of hesitancy around doing less in the business and starting to transition more into retirement potentially. And in working with her, it turned out she had this real fear around being irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And that's the word she used, irrelevant.
Wow.
And idle was another one. And it was like, well, what do you mean by being idle? And so really helping her through that conversation and figuring out what she could work on and how to transition really hit home for me. And I realized, if Nancy needs this kind of help, then I'm sure other people do too. Yeah. And another big push was just my own father. He was forced to retire at age 64 from the state of Indiana. He was an auditor, an audit supervisor for the state. New leadership came in. Everyone in his age group was basically out. And then to watch his deterioration was very difficult for me. And so deteriorating both mentally and physically, because after that, he and my mom would take a few trips, and then it's like he just lost interest and went into this downward spiral. And he eventually passed away of a combination of congestive heart failure and Alzheimer's. And for me, that's a big motivator too. It's like, I don't want to see anyone waste away or feel like they no longer can contribute just because of their age. Because that kind of
accelerates some.
It does.
I mean, I don't know if there's any scientific fact, but when you're, studies show in survival situations, right? When you're in the sea or something like that, is that by the mental acuity that is what would help people survive. So, doing math problems, stuff like that. So there's that correlation between retirement, this quote unquote, this physical age you pass where, okay, now you're supposed to not do anything, not use your brain, not do, just relax. You've earned it. And I think that, I think what you're doing is a great service for a lot of people out there could take advantage of just having some great questions asked and to realign purpose, which comes to my question of role identification. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how that fits into what you do.
Sure. So there's a lot of research, as you can imagine, has been done around retirement and how people deal with retirement and manage through it and transition through it. And there's a lot out there about how when we strongly identify with our work role, so I mentioned an attorney in a law firm or a partner at a CPA firm or a doctor or a nurse, and we strongly identify with that's what defines us. I am X doing this work. The stronger attachment we have to our role like that, the more difficult it's going to be for us in retirement. It's going to be a more difficult transition because it can be really tough to let go of that. And I mentioned about, working with clients on their new identity, because if they're so strongly tied to that role piece, it can be a tougher transition than someone who's had a lot of jobs over the years, done this, that, and a third thing, had a lot of job and career changes where it's like water off a duck's back, as opposed to someone who is so tied to that role that it can be a real struggle.
So a minute ago, you talked about some retirement pitfalls about your father. What other retirement pitfalls do you run into?
I would say, another big one is just thinking that it's okay just to wing it. I mentioned that 20 to 30 years, that's a long time. That's a big chunk of our lives potentially to be in this phase of life.
Winging it.
To wing it, right?
Yeah.
And so without any thought or idea, really put into it concretely in terms of thinking about, early retirement phase, mid-retirement phase, later retirement phase, breaking it out in terms of, so what are your goals going to be in each of those phases? And how do you know that you're on track when it comes to your time and the life that you're living? That's really important because it's nothing to just go wing, especially when you're looking at a pretty long time horizon potentially. So it's always good at least to have in mind something that you want to aim for because, again, that helps avoid any of that deterioration or downward spiral from that mental and physical aspect.
So what is the target audience, Lisa, that would really benefit from retirement coaching?
So for me, my target audience for this is anyone in their 50s through 70s and those who are, physically fit and active, and so looking forward to a healthy retirement phase, who, see the benefit of working with a trusted advisor. So, ideal clients for something like this are typically those who already work with advisors and have worked with other coaches, so they trust working with a professional who can help them with their goals and what to do to reach those and actions and are used to that type of relationship or have experienced that type of relationship before.
What are the steps in bringing on a new client?
So for me to bring on a new client, I do an introductory call that's complimentary just to see if we're a good fit. I ask some exploratory questions, and then I share the information about the coaching that I offer, and I offer coaching packages typically. And then if it looks like it's going to be a go, I send what's called a new client intake form that also asks some open-ended questions so I get a handle for the client and who they are. And we schedule what I call our first hour of coaching, which is a foundational session. And that's where we go over their responses to that intake form. There's a little bit of a self-assessment in there and really figure out our logistics for the coaching. And then we go from there.
Awesome. Well, that's really good. Some really fantastic information. I think that even I'm not 50, but I think about, well, have I thought about what retirement would look like? Because I always believe in that Covey principle, begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
And I want to enjoy that. I want it to have purpose, right? And I think that we have put this thing in place. So thank you for sharing. Thanks for coming on the show. How do our listeners get a hold of you?
So to find me, you can hop on my website. It's yournewaspect.com. Or give me a call at 425-216-3015 or email me at lisa@yournewaspect.com.
Thank you for coming on the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
Lisa, do you have any special offers available for those listening to the show today?
Sure. So for anyone who listened, you can let me know that you listened, and I'll provide you with a 1 hour of complimentary coaching, and that's a $200 value.
Wow, that's hard to pass. Thank you. So remember that all segments of our show are available to watch at our YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about any of our guests, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us after the break for some final thoughts and something fun to do this holiday.